7:14 pastime comedies tend to be excited and delighted to be joined in Studio A by the legendary one, Mark Rosen of Channel 4 Sports, your whole life just sports fame. And
good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, too. When we last talked, the Wolves were still playing basketball. They were eliminated.
They were.
Friday night in a
bloodbath.
It is an embarrassing and a beatdown as I've seen in a long, long time. They get destroyed by, they closed it at 10 or 12 just before the half, but then in the first few minutes it was over. Your thoughts?
Well, it was the one time, they closed at 10 to 12 where the fans tried to get themselves into the game and try to get the team into the game. The game was, for all intents and purposes, was over in the first 2 minutes. And looking over at the bench, the body language was very telling. Like, well, we're not going to hang with these guys. When you look back on it, it's amazing that the Wolves won 2 games. And granted, Wemby was kicked out of one of them early, but the fact that they stole that game 1, that's what gave me confidence, thinking, man, the Wolves are playing really well. And they got the Spurs kind of trying to figure things out here, and the Wolves are feeling pretty good about coming after winning that series against Denver. San Antonio had, think, well, this is going to be a long series. As it turned out, it was a relatively long series, but I don't think there was any question as the series went on that San Antonio had too much everywhere you looked, starting with Wemby and the guards and the speed they play with, the defense, and plus the Wolves were a mess, to say the least, and it's all been pretty well.
Well, what's more disturbing than anything is the quotes afterwards were just, they left me, my jaw just dropped.
Which ones?
Well, first of all, with Ant saying, we don't listen to the coaches. Can you think of anything that that's why there was a coach. He tells you what the game plan is. You listen to it and you run through your sets and your offensive. They decided, Ant said, we just play however we want to play. And then there were a couple, I don't remember which players they were, but they were complaining about, it just seems like even when the team's playing well, if some guys aren't getting their touches and they're not getting the stats, they get moody.
Yeah, that was Naz Reid's quote after the exit interview.
It's embarrassing. This team is so far. I think they're done. If that's the attitude you have, that you're worried about your own individual statistics rather than worrying about if the team is winning or not, and you don't listen to the coaches. I've never heard that from any other team in any other sport in my entire life. It's an embarrassment.
Well, I think there's been a lot of teams that have had, with the money they're making and the fact that they may zone out and tune out a coach. I don't know if it's just necessarily because they certainly listened to him in the Denver series. I think Finch did a terrific job. And the players responded, beating a really good Denver team. And the Wolves have had, success against Denver. They've always been captivating playoff series, and it was again. Denver was, other than Aaron Gordon, was healthy. So I think that, that's certainly, we saw a lot of that working in the Denver series. And it worked in the first game against San Antonio. What happened after that? I think the Spurs are clearly a better team, and we were seeing the evolution of what's happening with upper echelon draft picks. That San Antonio had 4 or 5 of them right in a row, and between them and OKC, they are clear head and shoulders above the rest of the West, a very competitive West. And the Wolves have to figure things out. Obviously, going forward, the moodiness. I was looking over at the bench. Jaden McDaniel. Obviously, Randall was a shell of himself, and all indications are, they're going to try to move him. I think that's the one area, but they have a good team.
They do?
Yeah, they certainly have a good team. They've been, the nucleus of the team is still there. That's gone to 2 Western Conference Finals. The problem now is OKC and San Antonio are just getting better. They're younger, they're faster. They got, the better younger players. Because they've been drafting in a position where you're going to get the elite players in the draft, and San Antonio's taken advantage of it. Looking at the guard play and what they have in the depth, and they didn't even have Fox last night, who's the veteran, and he's out with that ankle injury, which he suffered against the Wolves. But they still have enough on that team to certainly beat OKC, and probably what'll still be a long series. So, it's going to be a very aggressive summer, I think, for Tim Connolly and A-Rod and Laurie and the rest, Lloyd.
Well, what do you think they're going to do, and what can they do?
Well, they're going to move some pieces. It's just a matter of if they're going to go. I think, trying to get Giannis is obviously something that, you can't, I was reading something last night. Now, Béranger, the kid, who's another Frenchman, who's only 19, Béranger has got they feel very high about his prospects the next couple of years. But he's still 19. It's too much to say, well, he's going to be the guy. He's going to be the next kind of Wemby, look-alike in the next year or two. Maybe 3 years from now when he's 22, he's going to fill out. He's got skills. He can do a lot of things that'll help this basketball team. But I don't think this team can wait for Béranger to be the guy in the middle. They obviously need to, get guards that can play at a higher pace and to take the pressure off of Ant, someone who can be a real point guard. And losing Dante, for the year next year, basically, is really going to hurt them.
How do they get these guys? They have no draft picks to trade.
Well, I mean, I think you trade. I don't know if you can go after Jaden Brown. I mean, you trade Randall. You potentially may have to trade Jaden. I mean, you're going to have to give up 2 really good pieces, and then you got to figure out how you're going to fill those pieces. It's a sticky wicket. It always is when you're trying to do salary caps and everything else. But, they're probably in the same position as a lot of teams, maybe a little step ahead because they have Ant of a lot of the rest of the teams in the West. They're hardly alone, but they got to figure it out. And I think this is, they still feel they have their window is open, that they can try. But man, it's going to be some heavy lifting with those 2 teams ahead of them, with the talent and the depth and the skill. And that guy in the middle, who's a unicorn, as they say, and what he did last night, and coming down the court, down by 3, 30 seconds to go in overtime, playing on the road, playing 40-plus minutes, and he 41 points, 24 rebounds. You saw that three-pointer he took. That was one of the best shots I've ever seen in a playoff game in my life. I mean, you think of the exhaustion level. You watch, I don't know, I'm not comparing him with some guy they take out of the crowd, but we watch sometimes they just have a 3-point, grab some kid out of the stands and try to make a 3-pointer in 30 seconds, just a 3-pointer. Here's Wemby thinking he's got to be exhausted going up and down the court. He's down by 3. He misses that shot. OKC probably wins the game. I mean, if they get the rebound and go down and score, they'd have a 5-point lead and not much, it'd be under 30 seconds.
Correct.
He takes a 3-pointer and he does it with confidence. It's not like a desperation. There was 19 seconds left on the shot clock. How do you defend that? You don't. You just have to pray and hope he misses. And that's just one little aspect of his game, which, he made Chet Holmgren look like he's never played the game of basketball last night. And Chet's going to have to be a lot more assertive if they're going to try to. They had Caruso, fronting him, who had a phenomenal game last night for OKC. He kept them in the game. You got a 6-foot whatever guy trying to guard Wemby, and then you got Holmgren kind of lingering behind him. But man, it's they're finding out what everybody else did, that the Wolves found out, that you basically have someone that you can't. And I didn't think San Antonio did the best job of getting the ball to him at times for a while, but it's still a very competitive game, and it will be a great series.
The theory was that Tim Connelly built a team. He built Denver into a power, and then he decided to build a team that could beat Denver.
Right,
and he did.
He did with Gobert.
Now he better build a team that can beat not only Oklahoma City, but San Antonio as well. And that's going to be tough to do.
Well, it is again
really tough to do.
When San Antonio sucked for how many years, and because of that. This is where I'm not saying the tanking part of it, but you're able to draft, in the top 5, top 6 for 3-4 years in a row. You're going to probably land on some really good players, and they have good management. You got to draft the right people, but that's the difference between drafting a Rob Dillingham and a T.J. Shannon and drafting the guys that San Antonio has. You're drafting 18th, 19th, 20th. You're not drafting 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. No, we've seen that from past Wolves teams where that drafting in that area doesn't necessarily mean success, but it does when you're putting together a team. And OKC, the same thing. I mean, the Spurs were down and out. I mean, they were irrelevant for a long time. And now you draft number 1 and you get Wemby and, you just kind of build pieces around him. And, it's just like it's hard to imagine that they're going to have much of a drop-off.
I think the Wolves window is closed.
Well, I don't know what you. I mean, are you saying that because?
Because of San Antonio and because of.
Well, yeah. I mean, it might. I mean, it's going to take some. I mean, in order to combat
Gobert's past his prime.
Well, he can't. He can't handle the ball in the paint as we saw. They're going to have to. If Giannis came here,
Randall. I have no answers for what Randall does. So now you have two of your main pieces, two of your starters that they look like they're meaningless now on the club.
That's what I'm saying. You got to draft.
Io's okay. Bones, I don't know if he'll even be with the team. DiVincenzo's out. They're in big trouble.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you have to try to make a trade, I don't know what it's going to take. Probably the pieces we're talking about to try to get the guy in the middle. But that doesn't solve their guard problem. But if they got Giannis, obviously he's a difference maker. He's the one guy that can kind of match up with Wemby the best he possibly can. No one else in the West can. Doncic, I think when Doncic comes back, Joker, those guys are real talented. They can maybe get Wemby to come outside. They have options, but the Wolves, don't have one of those guys. Gobert, we know what his limitations are.
Well, let's go ahead and take a break. Come back with more. Tennessee, you got a keyword brought to us by BigDeck.com. Get your deck on.
The Fan and BigDeck.com want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword media at KFAN.com now for a shot at winning. The keyword is media. Enter now. KFAN.com.
You're listening to the
Couple 13-14 pastime comedies. Tennessee, Mark Rosen here as well. Yesterday, Bill Guerin, GM of the Wild, head coach John Hines had their I wouldn't call it an exit interview, but just state of the franchise after their loss. And Bill, he's pretty. He calls it as it is. He doesn't seem to try to couch anything. And he said the game that really bothered him was the home game after they had won 5-1 in a game that he said, and I think a lot of people believe this, when they play their best hockey, they can play with anybody, and then they get beat at home, and then they get they have a 3-0 lead in game 5, and they give that game up, and they know they need some. They got their goaltender Gus is going to be out for a while now with some kind of a surgery, and they hope to sign Hughes. Hughes has given every indication that he'll come back, but they always say that. I don't see why he wouldn't, but you don't know. But just what are your thoughts on the Wild, where they've been, where they're going, and where they're at?
In describing what you just did with the Wolves and compared to where the Wild franchises, I'd say the Wild's window, especially re-signing Quinn Hughes, who was kind of basically a godsend for this hockey team and what he can do. Makes your window wide open. I don't, Bill Guerin, doesn't mince words. He said, look, Wayne Gretzky was traded. If anybody thinks that they're safe on this hockey team, think again. In other words, he's not threatening. He's just saying this is the world we live in. Obviously, you got to match up salaries and make it work. But they know what their weaknesses are more than anyone, as far as getting a real established center. And, obviously getting healthy, that's something you just can't control. Losing Brodin and Eriksson Ek in particular just killed them in the Colorado series. That's not an excuse. That's a reality. But, they got a talented team. I think they got I watched a lot of that the Buffalo Montreal game last night. And I'm going to break down X's and O's, but I thought the Wild were better than both those teams in the East. Carolina should, I'm not saying waltz their way into the Stanley Cup final, but I think they probably will. They've been resting for 2 weeks. But I think, the Wild have, I think Guerin can taste it. He realizes they got over the hump from where those salaries were killing them with the Parisi Suter stuff and all this nonsense that went with that. They had a trial and error, go through some people. They got a young goaltender in Volstead that they're going to ride right now. And he'll make a move. Move or two. I'm sure they will to get themselves back in that conversation as Colorado and Vegas, finish off the Western Conference and goes on probably Colorado to the Stanley Cup final. But yeah, I think it was vintage Bill Guerin. What he does, he doesn't mince words. He doesn't disguise anything. He doesn't try to hide anything. He doesn't have that BS factor in his voice. That's for sure. Hughes is hanging out with his buddies, his teammates at Maynard's over the weekend, all these pictures that we're posting, and he loves Kirill, and they're hanging out, and, that doesn't mean he's going to sign here, but Quinn, I think his words spoke volumes after the season. He could have been a lot more vague about it, No, you still have to come to an agreement, but I really do believe he's going to be here, and that's a big plus. Starting from there, then they can just figure out the rest.
The part of the discussions will be, if he does want to sign, does he want a shorter deal? You know, do you do the 3-year deal, or is it a max of 8 tend to be? Is that the max a guy can sign?
Yes.
Yes, 8.
How old is he?
Late
27.
26, 27. Okay.
So, you know, Teneby and I were discussing this. You know, Teneby would love to see the 8-year deal. You lock him up for a long time. He's a franchise-changing player. And I understand.
He's 26, actually.
Wow.
And I understand that, but I am also... You get tied to a guy too long, and maybe that's a guy you want to be tied to. I'm probably wrong on this one, but I as a player and as a ownership, 3 years is good to me. A lot can happen in 3 years.
Well,
and if he plays well during that 3 years and you win with him, he's probably more than likely going to sign again. Now, you might have to pay him more at that point, but
I don't disagree with that theory. I think that it helps both the player and the team to understand that. Now they've signed Kirill; he's going to be the highest paid player in the NHL, and you know, even Kirill had his skeptics, even though he scored a bunch of points in the playoffs. He didn't necessarily score the goals that they needed from him, but I still, you know, we all know that this team is light years better than anyone else. And I mean, that with Kirill, Kaprizov in that lineup, and Boldy in particular, they have emerging superstars that are going to be around in the prime of their career. With if they had Kirill and Boldy and Hughes and Volstead, which is going to solve, I mean, I think a lot of their issues kind of settling on a number one goalie. You know, the rest of it, I'm not saying you're just filling in blanks, but you know, and Eriksson Ek, and you know, they got a very good team, and I still think he's gonna shoot for the moon a little bit. I'm not saying he's gonna go get an Austin Matthews. That would cost him dearly, but I think they're gonna try real hard to bring in another big time player. And I don't know how Tenna maybe knows. I mean, how you figure out all the salaries and where they are. I know the salary cap is going up. They'll have some room. Even signing Hughes to a long-term deal, that doesn't mean they're going to be handcuffed to the point of not being able to do anything, but it's going to cost them a player or two. Then I don't think they're going to sign a free agent, but I think the future is still pretty bright. And given the competition, given the fact that, you know, Colorado's really good, we know that, but I don't think the Wild have to take a back seat to pretty much anybody if they can get, you know, if they were healthy this postseason, that may have been a difference too. That the Avs and Dallas, they already beat Dallas. You know, they're going to be right there again. They should be next year. So,
Tenna, this might be correct or incorrect. I'm not paying as close attention to the Wild as I once did, but part of the conversation was if they were going to acquire somebody, they may have to part with one of their goaltenders, right? Mm-hmm. But now that Gus looks like, well, he's undergoing surgery, and not only that, when asked, the media asked Guerin, will he be back for the beginning of the regular season? It was, I don't know. Does that take a trade of a goaltender pretty much off the table? I mean, you know, you figure he will have a successful surgery and will come back and play, but still there is a question mark. Do you think that changes?
Well, hopefully any thoughts of trading Bally, Wallstead.
Yeah, go on.
I didn't want them to do it anyway.
Right.
And now maybe that makes it easier to be like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't include him in a deal. But it is, if you are going to be in the Austin Matthews market, or, you know, apparently last year, Robert Thomas of St. Louis, they offered Volstead and Urov and probably more to get him, and the Blues turned that down. There's not a lot of assets that the Wild can have. Now, the one thing they might have going for them in the Matthews thing is Matthews has a no-move clause. So it's to a certain extent, he can kind of dictate where he wants to go. Right? I mean, if, you know.
But he's not a free agent.
What I'm trying to say is, like, you only need the best offer of the teams he's willing to go to as opposed to the best offer in general, right? And he might say, hey, you know, I played with Quinn Hughes and Matt Boldy and Brock Faber on the U.S. Olympic team, and Bill Guerin I'm familiar with, and they got a chance to win, and they need a center. That's a good spot for me. You know, the Wild are still going to have to pay up to get him, but in terms of, you know, maybe having to throw out like a Quinn Hughes level type trade, they might not have to reach that just because Matt's gonna be like, no, I don't want to. I just want to go there.
With Gus,
work out a deal with the Wild.
In October's the start of the season, but still, that's asking a lot. I mean, your team's got to do quite a deep dive on his physical situation at that point with his hip and where he's at, and I don't know who the backup. If Gus can't start the season with the Wild, I don't even. You know who their other goalie is?
Oh, they have like goalies in the AHL, but I'm more disappointed that I wanted to trade Gus this summer and try to get, now, and he had a no move clause as well, so he would have been able to dictate where he wants to go.
Interesting.
But I would have liked to get that salary off the books because he's going to be making $7 million for the next 5 years.
Good boy.
Now that makes that challenging if he's got a bum hip and he's not going to be ready to start the season.
Right.
It might be too hard to trade him now.
Yeah, that's what they get paid the big bucks for. It's guys in the front office. Figure it out. It's not easy, the competition. But they should be, they'll be in the mix again. Just go through 82 games and try to stay healthy at the right time.
Is the Frost dynasty over? They won 2 in a row and they got eliminated. Are they done? Do they need to rebuild and should heads roll?
Rebuild, I think it's expansion.
Yeah, they're going to be forced to rebuild
again. That's just,
it's like 4 expansion franchises.
It's like what the Lynx, had to go through.
It's growing. The women's professional hockey league is growing by leaps and bounds. That's a good thing.
Well, it is a good thing, and you want it to be competitive, and Lynx have found that out, losing a couple players, and the Frost, I guess, as well. But, Cheryl Reeves, at least where the Lynx concerned, is very, pragmatic about the whole thing. So, like they lost the game with Chicago the other night. We're not as good as they are right now. We don't have, plus they don't have their best player. So it's a little difficult to compete at the highest level this early in the season in particular when you're kind of handicapped that way.
One more segment to go with Mark Rosen, Common and Teneby. Short break back after this here on The Fan.
To the Common Man with Mark Rosen on The Fan. Minnesota's home for the...
We were few and far between, but there were some of us who didn't want to see Bodega Cat get traded to the New York Knicks. And, well, look at the Knicks now. Karl Anthony Towns on his way to the Eastern Conference Finals. More than I think there's a pretty good chance he'll get to the NBA Finals, and here we are. On the outside looking in, getting beat in the...
I think there was a lot of...
the semifinals.
I just seeing him here. He did so much for this community beyond playing basketball, and it was a loss for this community beyond just the basketball court. And I think anybody who's been around Karl Anthony Towns wishes him well. And I'd love to see Knicks I'd love to see him win the whole thing. But I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, Cleveland's got a really good team, but I think the Knicks should win that series. It might take 7, but Cleveland surprised Detroit. The Pistons had to be. I mean, that's a very. Bickerstaff took it well, and he said, "Listen, I'm not disappointed in this team." They were certainly on the cusp of looking like they were going to be the team. The Celtics had injury problems. They've had other. Looked like they were going to be on a run for a while. This is what happens. It's hard to stay once you get on top. It's hard to stay on top, and the Pistons aren't there yet. The Knicks, maybe surprise some people, but, Jalen Brunson's the heart and soul of that team. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, he's the guy he's the engine that makes that team go. But it should be a fun series. I'm not saying it's going to be a championship fight like OKC and San Antonio, no matter what the Knicks do in this series, they're going to be massive underdogs in the NBA Finals, but who cares? You're there, so you get a shot, and it's all that matters. And New York is loving this right now. Spike Lee and all the fans there are soaking it all in. So
I think what everybody did was after the Gobert trade, they wanted to deem Tim Connelly a genius, the best general manager in the league. Look what he does. Look what he did with Denver. Look what he's done with Minnesota. Well, look what he's done with Minnesota now. We're in big trouble. Big trouble.
Well, we don't know that yet.
I know it.
Well, okay. Tim Connelly's pretty damn good at his job. Okay. He did it in Denver. He did it here. He beat Denver more than a couple times. The Cat thing was to have 2 really max contracts on this team was going to be really difficult. And good for Cat that he was able to make this work somewhere else. But he had his detractors here, too. I'm not sure he would have been the difference maker. But Gobert we know Gobert's ability to neutralize Joker was well documented. But it's a whole other level when he's going against the guy he took under his wing in France for the French national basketball team. And, he's no longer the Jedi master, and we see his deficiencies. He can't just hang on to the basketball, and you couldn't play him at the end. And I don't know I don't know what Connelly's going to do with him. I mean,
there's nothing he can do with him
defensively. Yeah, I mean, he can still make an impact at 34, whatever he is right now. But that's what they again.
You're getting ripped by Pete's the engineering guy.
For what?
What is Rosie smoking? They don't have anybody to trade for Giannis and no draft picks. The only one the Bucks would want for Giannis is Ant, and that's obviously not happening. They're like the players Mike Lynn traded to Dallas. Jimmy Johnson didn't want any of the players, only draft picks. Nobody wants Gobert or Randall. Everyone else is a journeyman. You can't sub in three.
Jaden McDaniels is a journeyman?
You can't.
What's he talking about?
You can't sub in three mediocre players.
Well, what is he talking about with Jaden McDaniels? Jaden McDaniels is not a journeyman.
He's okay.
Well, he's more than okay.
No, he's not.
Well, I'm just saying.
He can play defense when he wants to, when he's not moody and pouting and,
And Naz Reid and.
Well, yeah, but do you think, so you think Milwaukee, do you think they're going to call Milwaukee and go, here, you can have Jaden McDaniels, and we'll give you Naz Reid, and you give us Giannis.
And maybe a number one pick with someone else.
We don't have any picks. They're gone.
They have a number one pick this year, Common.
It's 28th overall.
Well,
you just told me off there it's not worth it. Well, they've traded many of their picks. They don't have a plethora of picks. Yeah. They're in trouble. You just have to say it. I know you and Charlie want to have courtside seats, but it's over.
Knock it off with
this.
Well, it's over. You could say that. Okay, so is it over for Phoenix, Dallas, Denver?
Yeah.
Well, that's not because their teams are falling apart. It's also because the San Antonio Spurs had how many lottery picks, Common? How many? Right. Well, answer me.
I don't know. How many?
I don't know.
Well, look it up. How many? Were you looking? Tell me.
4. And their starting lineup last night, they had 4 or 5 players on the court who are younger than Naz Reid at 27. So they kept their draft picks
and they drafted correctly.
Well, they bottomed out. That's how they got those draft picks.
Well, we bottomed out at one time.
And they got Ant. And they got Cat. What's your point?
The point is, we have a terrible roster. We have one player on the roster that's worth keeping.
You're arguing against yourself. I'm saying that San Antonio, nobody was even paying attention to Spurs basketball. Nobody was paying attention to OKC basketball. Look at the draft picks they've had with Castle and Vassell, whatever. They've had all these kids that ended up being number one picks, including a guy named Wemby, who was the number one overall pick. The Wolves ended up getting their first time. They got the number one overall pick. They got the guy who was the best player available in that draft. It was Anthony Edwards. Wemby wasn't available that year. Now the Spurs have parlayed being a crappy basketball team for how many years into being a championship-type team for a long time to come. And it's put the Lakers are the team that the NBA wants to have to win. How is their situation going to get any better with 42-year-old LeBron James? And, Doncic is going to come back. I mean, Houston's got a good young team. Phoenix has got, pieces that are good. The rest of the Western Conference, which is really good, is looking up at these 2 young teams because they were able to build them with high draft picks. That's it. I mean, that's not their, maybe they're going to change the tanking rule. I mean, you're not blaming them. They drafted right. They got a great general manager. They got the right players and here they are.
We're just on different ends. You like the look of this Wolves team. I hate the look of it. You like it. You like what Connolly's done. You like the trade for Gobert. You love
putting words in my mouth.
Well, no, but you love the Gobert trade when it happened. You loved it.
I did when it happened, and it worked out pretty well for them. You don't think it did? You think at that time when they were able to beat the teams that they could not beat without a defensive player of the year, a 4-time defensive player of the year?
Win the Western Conference Finals and get back to me. Well, it's true.
Well, you just ignore.
Well, no, I'm not ignoring.
Well, you are. You're not saying you were in favor of the Gobert trade. I was at the time, yeah, and because they needed a guy who could stop people in the middle. He's the defensive player of the year. And you watch his limitations when he plays a young kid like Wemby. Can't hang on to the ball. He can't shoot out, outside of 2 feet. I mean, there aren't any Wembys outside of Wemby. I mean, he's the guy. And OKC's got Chet Holmgren, who was an All-Pro this year. And they got SGA, and they got a great basketball team. And they're going to be there. And it makes it really tough for the rest of the Western Conference, not just the Timberwolves. It's not just, let's just blame every other general manager
we'll see how good
in the
Conley
NBA
is
West.
Now. We'll see how good he is.
And every other general manager in the West. What about the rest of them? Let's talk about them. What are they going to do?
Well, they've never been as highly regarded as Tim. Tim's gotten all the credit as being a genius. I've never heard the same thing said about most of the other GMs in the league.
Well, you haven't really paid attention to what the other GMs are doing.
Can you name another GM in the league on any other team? Which you can't. So,
Mitch Kupchak.
So you got one. Very good.
Okay.
Now your Twins club.
Oh, boy.
Jeffers with a broken bone
Hammy.
in his wrist.
Yeah, he's out for 60 days at least.
Royce Lewis sent to the minor leagues. Topa sent to the minors. The team is
Falling apart.
falling apart. And you talk about Royce Lewis would be your Anthony Edwards. He was supposed to be that guy. He was supposed to be your, you name your franchise kind of player. He was supposed to be that. And he got off to a great start. He had some clutch home runs, some grand slams. He was good in the playoffs in that first year. And since then, it's been a disaster for him.
Yeah, I missed. I was gone over the weekend. I didn't hear. I know Paul Molitor does such a good job on those broadcasts because he knows this just in. He knows the game inside and out. He knows all the weaknesses and strengths of the Twins team. He managed a lot of those guys even when they were in the minors. And I'd love to hear his analysis of what's gone wrong with Royce Lewis as someone who's a professor of baseball like Paul Molitor is, and understanding what even his own slumps he went through, and what mentally the challenges that he seems to be. Talk about a guy who's a mess in between the ears. It's Royce Lewis right now. I feel for the guy. He seems like he really needs therapy. I don't know. Baseball is such a humbling game, and when things go south, you think to yourself, how can he not come back? What was who's the player that was really on a hot streak for the Twins a couple of years ago? Lin-Manuel, what's his name's nephew?
Jose Miranda.
Yeah. He looked like that kid was going to be, tearing up the league for a while. Everything was going well for him. Now you can't find him with a searchlight. And with Royce Lewis, it's a damning indictment, unfortunately. And I feel bad because he's so charismatic. They don't have many players like that. The playoff series he had here when he hit the 2 home runs and everything was going his way. And I don't know. Some injuries occur, but it's more than that. And I don't know what they do to try to get him to get back on track, but it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It is. It just is.
Well, and I don't, and again, you wonder, this hasn't been just like, one short slump or another slump. This has been going on now. Teddy and I talked about this earlier today where he had said earlier in his career, he goes, he didn't believe in slumps. And now, of the top 30 slumps in Twins history, he has 2 of the longest. It got so bad he hired his own personal, a private hitting coach, and that hasn't helped either. And, I think part of the reason why, and I said this to Tenneby, and I don't know because I've not talked to Royce, but my guess is he didn't believe in slumps because he probably never had one, right? Mm-hmm. When he was in Little League or T-ball in high school and college.
Natural ability.
Yeah, he was tearing the cover off the ball, so he didn't believe that there was such a thing as slumps. And the first one, he broke out of it sort of kind of, and you think, okay, yeah, maybe there are slumps. And then he has another one. And now you saw the numbers. They were posted today in the story talking about his demotion. Those are just paltry numbers. Yeah. That's not of a guy that you were going to build your franchise around this guy.
I always talk about other sports and players who, up and down, and we're going to have that discussion about, J.J. McCarthy and where he's at in his career in year 3, whatever. It's, you look at baseball players a lot of times more than any other player because it's just, the box score doesn't lie and the averages don't lie. And, everybody breaks it down in so many different ways. And, it's a humbling game. And to try to fight your way out of that, I don't know what St. Paul is going to be the magic elixir trying to hit minor league pitching for a while. Does that mean send him back up here, sometime in June or July, and he's going to finally find his swing again? I have no idea. It just seems a lot of it is between the ears. I can't believe a guy with that kind of talent has fallen off the face of baseball. And I've seen it happen before. A lot of great players start out, really, really well, and then. I just mentioned Miranda, not that he was a Royce Lewis category, but still, what happens to these guys?
Well, Larnach and Walder and all these guys. Now, none of them were as highly touted as Royce Lewis, but it was always, these guys are going to be the nucleus of our team for years to come, and they all had their moments, but it's hit and miss when it comes to, and baseball seems to be more difficult to predict.
Oh, 100%.
Not just success, but long-term success, where it's not just like, hey, kid he had a nice season, a nice half season, a nice 2 years, then he faded, into obscurity. where you have a guy that you say, we can pencil this guy in the lineup at second base for the next, 10 years or 6, 7 years anyways, right?
Well, yeah, I always say if you get, in baseball, if you get on base 3 out of 10 times, you're going to be a millionaire, times over. It's just not an easy sport to master. And, I don't know. I'll leave it to the Paul Molitor's of the world to try to help figure that out in terms of what I'm sure Derek Shelton, the current manager, has worked hard with Rosen trying to figure it out, and sports psychologists that they employ. I mean, I know a couple of those guys have been around the team for years and years and years. You could sit down and have deep conversations about a lot of things. Look at tape, and almost sometimes these guys overthink it. I mean, I don't know if Royce has done that. I mean, you look at so much tape, and you look at your swing, and you're trying to. It's like a golf swing, Common. I mean, you know that better than anyone. All of a sudden, what happens? So Arnie Palmer used to say something about that walk between the driving range and that first tee.
Correct.
A lot of things happen, and I think that's what Royce is feeling. Maybe he's hitting the cover off the ball in batting practice, but man, when you get to when the game starts, there's something going on. It just ain't clicking.
Somebody sent me a text message that says, seems like Common is happy that the Wolves lost. I would say I'm angry. Again, did you see the quotes when Ant said, we're not listening to the coach? Mm-hmm. Doesn't that upset you? Then you may go, what do you mean you're not listening to the coach? What do you mean you're just trying to do things on your own? And then you saw, well, we're moody. There were quotes from, I think it was McDaniels. Well, it was a Reed or McDaniels where they were saying, well, if guys aren't getting their touches, it's still, even if you're winning, everybody still wants their touches. It's like, do you think that's what they care about in San Antonio? Do you think that's what they care about in Oklahoma City? They play as a team. They have a goal. They're trying to get to a world championship. And I can only go by the quotes. That's what they say. Ant said, we don't listen to the coach. We're trying to do things on our own. And there were other quotes saying, we're all still kind of, even if the team's doing well, we all want our touch, because they all want to touch the ball. They all want to look at their box score. They all want to score points. It's like, they deserve to lose. If anything, when you play like that, you can't play like that in the NBA. You have to play with a concerted effort, game in and game. Well, we talked about the beginning of the season when Ant said, it seems like we don't want to play these regular season games. You think that's what Oklahoma City said? Sure, they had a lull, and I'm sure there's times during the season where everybody's kind of like, and they let some games get away. It seemed like the Wolves, and I understand it's human nature. You get to the Western Conference Finals 2 years in a row and get blown out. Now you go, now we got to try it a third time and go through the long grind of the regular season. So you don't want to go through that because you want to get. So that's why they approach the season with, we'll do just enough to get in the top 6 and see if we can turn it on like a switch. And it didn't work. Well,
that's why we heard, and we had some of those. They had so many of those lulls in the regular season where they lose to teams that they had no right losing to, and that's why you end up in the position that you're in. Not that they weren't going to be this year, San Antonio or certainly OKC, but they had to beat those other teams, and that's where those bad habits, I think, started. And honestly, you look back on it now, I mean, even beating Denver again, I'm kind of stunned that happened, because I thought the Nuggets had a really good basketball team in the post, ready for the postseason especially with Joker back, and I don't know what happened between that.
Here's the quote, Edwards. Quote, we've just got to listen to the coaches. We had a hard time with processing stuff and going out there and doing it, trying to do stuff on our own. That's our problem. I feel like you're supposed to build championship habits in the regular season, which I begged this team to do all year long. And the basketball community told me, you're wrong, Common. Stick to golf. This team will be able to flip it like a switch when it comes to playoff time.
Well, they did for one series.
Yeah, but that's Denver. They have Denver's number. They know Denver.
Denver beat them too. 2 years ago.
I know, but right now that's a bad matchup. Joker was exposed for not being a very good defensive player. He was exposed for that, and that's why the Wolves beat him.
I think that both things are right. I think the Wolves established some really poor habits during the regular season, losing the teams, and many times you'd shake your head, and I think those things come back to bite them. At the same time, I don't think any other team in the West. And we saw what happened with the Lakers. I know they didn't have Doncic, but the rest of the Western Conference right now cannot compete with Oklahoma City and San Antonio. That's as clear as day. So we could say those things, and you're right about some of the bad habits this team had, and not listening to Finch, who's definitely coming back next year, and say, well, yeah, that's true, but now they have. It's like watching Secretariat and someone else, running away from the pack in a horse race. These two teams are clearly more than a notch or two above the rest of the West, and that includes some really good basketball teams. I mean, someone suggested the only way the Wolves to get out of this is to move to the Eastern Conference, where they would be able to compete with pretty much all those teams. That ain't going to happen in the West with the future of what those two teams are doing right now, and they're going to take it out on the rest of the conference for a while, unless they get haughty and cocky and selfish, in the next few years, which has happened. But yeah, they look like there's no stopping them.
What do you think about your guy A-Rod? He's back. He's going to play with the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad
him and McCarthy, they got the band back together.
Yeah, how
right?
about that? Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, they got $22 million guaranteed, up to $25 million, which is like, whoa. They got a new coach, obviously new coaches, new old coach back in Pittsburgh, and A-Rod's going to sling it around one more time, and good for him. I think the league is more interesting. They don't have a lot of big names. Mason Rudolph is still there. I mean,
yeah, I think he's a backup.
The league is better off with A-Rod in the league, and this is maybe if it's his last hurrah. Whenever they're on TV, I think it's kind of appointment television just to see what he's got left in that right arm. And the Steelers aren't a great team. Obviously, they've fallen off a little bit, but it's A-Rod, and so he's worth watching. There you go,
A-Rod.
A-Rod, amazing. How many years we've had that discussion?
Ravens will be coming to TCO
yes.
for the those whatever they call it, the scrimmages.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I had Johnny Athletic on today on my podcast talking about are those 2 days the days that more than OTAs, mini camps leading into training camp, that we're going to see a real opportunity to see where J.J. McCarthy is, and Kyler Murray, more importantly. But, not that you're going full bore and you're trying to hit those guys, but we saw it last year. Is this going to be McCarthy's best chance to kind of impress the coaching staff that he's made some strides? Not that he's going to start game one, because I don't think that's going to happen, barring injury, but that he's made a lot of strides within everything else that's going on. I mean, it's a long process. First of all, they got to name a GM, which I think is going to happen next week. But not that that's going to affect what the decisions are on the field right now. But yeah, I mean it'll be great to have the Ravens in town, Lamar Jackson, and that they got a new head coach and talented group. And
do you think it's Murray's job to lose? Because I think it is.
It is.
I don't. I mean, I think they're keeping McCarthy because it's like we don't want to give up on him already. But I think they look at this as, unless, like you say, he does some amazing turnaround, he's a long-term project.
Well, in retrospect, that was a mistake that they made. They didn't look at him as a long-term project, and that's on KOC too. Because he should have not been in a position to start. Right, he just wasn't ready coming out of Michigan with that background.
We had a spirited discussion that you fought back. You went after me. You were even mocking me a little bit. I do too. Well, it's because that's what it's all about.
Yes, sir.
It's when